Jeff gives a fair deal. A fair deal at the poker table. And now, reporting live from Cleveland, in a basement somewhere in the center of town, just under the Tower Video... Oh, no, hold on. And now, reporting live from Cleveland at Content Marketing World 2016, please give a warm content marketing welcome to Jeff Julian.
Nice. I feel like I need like some horns in the background, some little trinkets.
Yeah, like and you come out and you do like a fake golf swing. You're like,
exactly.
And
some dancers come out.
You're like, thank you very much. And that's the show, everybody.
Exactly. Well, thank you, buddy, for that awesome introduction. I'll have to use that all the shows beforehand.
I think you should make all of your guests do that from here on out.
That would be amazing. I had a guest on here that he sings a song at the beginning of each one of his podcasts.
Oh my God.
It's like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So great. I'm glad to have you here. You are all over the place, right?
I am.
So you speak everywhere. You are a content strategist, you're healthcare, but then you have the comic book side,
yes.
right? So tell me a little bit more about that comic book side, right? So when you go home, you've had a hard day in healthcare and pharmaceuticals and everything, you're speed talking really quietly at the end of your commercials and you got tiny little text and you put that down and then you're like, I want to draw some funny pictures.
It's funny, and thank you for prompting me that. I started off as a journalist. I was a reporter, newspaper, magazines, and then somewhere along the way I discovered comic books. And I was writing comic books and somebody said, oh, we want you to set up a site on this new company, America Online. I said, oh, great. So we'll create an online magazine. But I didn't know, they hired me. They only had budget for one. So they were going to send you back to learn how to code. So I learned how to code and program. Now, the long way around the horn on this was one day I got a phone call from Merck. And they went, we need somebody who has written for the web, knows digital, can write some code, and do consumer healthcare. And just like at the other company, I said, I don't know anything about healthcare. They go, no, we'll teach you. So they sent me back to school. Yeah, like, we got that. And that was the beginning of working in healthcare and pharma. But at the same time, my trajectory, I was working for a publication about comic books. My trajectory of working in comic books, I said I was a reporter. And then we would go to all the parties. And then one day I was like, hey, do you think I could write a few issues? And they were like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden I was a comic book writer. And at the time, I was writing a comic book character that not that many people knew, called Deadpool. And it was one of those books that was, that's going to get canceled. Just let him do whatever he wants. And it was great, freeing and liberating. So I never wanted to let it go because, okay, as my career in pharmaceutical copywriting was taking off, my career in comic books was also starting to get off the ground. And that became one of those things where you go, well, let's see if we could do both of them. And I hid it for years. Like I never told anybody. I'm an educator. I've published books. My sixth book on visual storytelling and comic book creating, and next con after I do this convention, I go to New York Comic Con and teach classes on writing and storytelling and art. One day somebody says to me, look, you have a unique skill set and a unique selling proposition. You're the only pharmaceutical marketing writer who also writes Deadpool and comic books at night. Why don't you make that your unique selling proposition and use that? And that was what made me think, wow, there's a lot in common between comic books and websites, right? So think about this. Both of the mediums, you use words and pictures juxtaposed on a page to tell a story and to elicit a call to action. That's a website and a comic book, right? So you can say, look, in a comic book, I want you to see the cover, words and pictures juxtaposed to tell a story so that you buy the issue and then turn the page. On a website, it's words and pictures juxtaposed on a page to get you to do a call to action, which is to click the next thing. And I was like, well, they're not that far apart. And I've always stayed in health education. I love the high science of it. I love the idea that you can do something substantial. But as you said, at night I come home, take the tie off, and go, all right, page 1, panel 1. Let's get started. And those two skills have overlapped. And actually, as you noted, my presentation was on visual storytelling at an enterprise level, like how to scale visuals. And I like to think that in comics, I learned how to tell stories, visual stories on a deadline. And I think that's exactly what we do with websites. We tell visual stories on a deadline.
Absolutely. And I think as more and more marketers start to stop writing articles all the time and start to produce more content, start to look at video content, start to look at audio, and the need for storyboards, the need for storytelling that actually has a beginning and end and some sort of, epic battle in the middle, they start to get lost, right? And when Robert Rose introduces things like the hero's journey to writers, right, and they sit back and they just kind of floored that there's a real formula for something that people have been using for years and years and years. And like you with the comic books, understanding how to tell a story, how to build suspense, and then how not to spill all your candy in the lobby, right? And actually let it have a part 2, a part 3, and continue the story. I think it's critical for marketers today because we all want to say, we got 10 points, we finished the story, they go away, and hopefully we got their email in the meantime. Are you seeing that aspect?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. Over the past 2 years or more, the biggest pressure word that's been applied to everybody's LinkedIn profile is storyteller. And we say, this is what a story is. I just went and saw Star Wars, and I just saw Deadpool, and I just saw the Suicide Squad movie, or any movie or television show. Those are stories. And then we go back to the office and go, well, how do we do this with our consumer packaged good? And it's really hard. And so what Robert has done and what I'm trying to do is try to say, look, there are certain components to storytelling that have been documented, taught to us when we were young. The beginning of a story, the setup, the conflict, how the conflict is addressed, how conflict is resolved. Every person is on their own personal user journey, and everybody is the hero of their own story. And when a hero reaches a conflict point, and as you noted, you've got that hero of 1,000 faces where you can either meet the conflict and turn back, meet the conflict, go around it, meet the conflict, and go through it, right? Those are sort of standards, and you have archetypes. And a brand can be part of that. A brand can be the solution, right? So I had to get here on an airplane. I don't care about United Airlines founding fathers or history. I don't care that there's 150 flights a day internationally. I needed one from Newark to Cleveland, and then I needed one from Cleveland back to Newark. I really don't care about their brand story. I don't care about their autobiography. It doesn't matter to me. I have a conflict. It's an easy conflict to solve, but it's a conflict, and a brand was able to give me enough content to tell me why their brand was the right one, because there's 20 airlines to choose from out of Newark. So what we need to do is figure out a way that we solve somebody's problem because they're the star of the story. We're not the star of the story. And I think Mitch Joel had pointed out that the hub and spoke, the idea that the brand is the center of the universe and we radiate outward. It's not true. It never was true. We just didn't realize it. Now we have a story. We have to figure out that conflict. So distilling down and understanding that there is an underlying story for all of us, and our brand might solve somebody's problem and not solve others, is how we create content that moves people, because ultimately marketing is a commercial sport. It's not about just entertaining people. It is about motivating people to change their behavior. And that's a big thing, and that's what Robert talks about. And, all the smart speakers talk about it. So I listened really carefully, and I said, well, I'm going to talk about that too.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. And it's the cool thing is there's so many people telling stories really well. Like you've mentioned film, and there's so much content out there on how they tell those stories and the behind the scenes. So you want to learn about, how they filmed Back to the Future. There's a documentary on Netflix for free that'll tell you from script to filming, the hero's journey, how Marty never changes, right? And all this stuff. And you sit back as a content writer and say, I'm getting from that. But when your only source for information is other marketers and what they're doing with content, then you're only going to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so you got to emulate other people. So comic books, there's tons of great stories in comic books. There's tons of great dialogue, right? There's history. You can go back and see what they were talking about in the 40s and look at the 60s and look at, that X-Men era. And then, what happens when G.I. Joe comes in the 80s and all this stuff. And then
your comics
watch when kids are just absorbed, like what that was like for them to sit down and wait for a comic book and then read it and, covet that thing. Right. I pulled up, my son found my box of old toys, right? And starting lineup characters coming out, and all of a sudden he found these comic books. One of them was the Death of Superman comic book. And I still remember making my mom take me to the comic book store because Superman was going to die, and I had to get that copy and read it because it was a big deal. And that was an experience, right? I remember the experience of my mom taking me there for that comic book, a piece of content that I paid money for and took it back. How can we do the same thing with the people that we're trying to reach, to where they've got such an epic problem or something's happening in their environment that they'll remember the story of how they got there to get that piece of content, how it changed them, and then moved on. And we always go back to that hub, right? We're always going to sell something. We're going to continue to try to sell them something. We can release that a little bit and tell that epic story and look at all these different avenues of learning how to tell good stories.
And a good storyteller knows their audience. They know what their mission is to complete a story. Nobody wants to be messaged with the September message. But there's a lot of people here right now, they're like, our September message is as follows. I don't care about your September message. I need a plane flight, or I need to solve a problem. And solving problems is what we can do. And we have to get out of this idea of a sales funnel, right? Because we're treating people like a prospect. Prospect, let's talk to them as let's talk at people. And content marketing, and this is not comfortable for a lot of people, content strategy and content marketing are often an adversarial relationship to a brand manager whose job is to get out the September message, right? Our job is to serve the user. We are in no way going to deliver and talk messages at people and change their behavior, right? It's not the delivery of a message, right? You can deliver message, you can deliver junk mail to me. It didn't change my behavior. What we have to do is change behavior, and ultimately to get in under people's skins, what you have to do is contextualize an experience, right? We think about healthcare, right? Some people are into health and fitness. You talk to them one way, but in pharma, well, we talk to people with sickness, right? Somebody's already sick. So it's easy to tell an overweight, smoking diabetic to lose weight or exercise more, get more steps. But you have to contextualize it into that person's story and say, you know what? You want to dance at your daughter's wedding? Let's get started and shoot for a goal. Let's make the why matter. And it's different for somebody who might run a marathon, who might say, I want to look great in my clothes. I want to feel good. I'm going to do these things. So there are different personas. So not everybody gets the same message, and not everybody will be receptive to the same message. And what people don't want to always do is do the hard work of breaking down all the different personas. So in healthcare and pharma, think about healthcare and pharma. I have a patient. I might have a patient caregiver. If that person goes to the hospital, I might have a nurse. I might have a nurse educator. I might have a physician. I might have a specialist. I might have a pharmacist, and maybe somebody who gets this particular product and solution on what we call formulary, so that doctors can use it and prescribe it. That's 8 people. None of them have the same needs. So I can't put brand message of September out and it work with everybody. Yeah. I have to think about brand message, where that person is in their user journeys. The first time I heard about my product, or I've been using it for a couple of years. Those are different things. And one of the principles from comic books, every issue of every comic is somebody's first. Every issue is somebody's first. Somebody picks it up and doesn't know that Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive spider and now has spider superpowers, and then the proportional strength of a spider. We need to say it. And because we've read it so many times, but everywhere in the issue, we're reminding them, well, I'm Peter Parker, and I'm also secretly Spider-Man, the proportional strength of a spider, and the last time I faced the Dr. Octopus villain, well, that's what happened. So what we have to do is remember that not everybody knows our brands. Not everybody's an iPod or an iPhone or an iPad. We have to help educate people. And then after we educate people, we have to give them a compelling reason to use us. After that, we have to reinforce. I always say where we fall down is we might have a prestige product. You look out your window in your parking lot. If you see a Mercedes and a BMW, that's a prestige product. That exceeds the basic need from getting me to point A to point B. You can get a Hyundai or Kia. You probably get 2 or 3 for the same price.
Absolutely.
Right? But there's a reason that somebody was able to say, I want this prestige experience. And that comes down to content and experience. And that's where we can say, that's where content marketing plays a role. First of all, nobody walks into a car dealership and just goes, hey, sell me.
Yeah.
Right? And we do a lot of research before we get there. We talk to our peers, we look online, we do our research, go to Consumer Reports and Edmunds and talk to our friends on Facebook. And then we walk in. We even know the sticker price and what the delta is between the dealership's price point is. So what we want to do is make sure that we're providing the right content to the right people at the right time and the right device, because at the end of the day, we're more likely to pick this up. It's a smartphone, and than anything else.
So it's a great car analogy, because none of us have ever chosen a car based off of going to Carfax and turning off images and just looking at miles per gallon, weight, and it's the visual side. That's what pulls us in, and so much content is just textual side, right? It's just the stats, the hard things, why you need this. And look at the iPhone 7 announcement. None of the images said what the hell they were showing. They were just sleek, well lit, no headphone jack images that then everybody starts to add content to. And that's why I really love your focus on that visual aspect of it.
Yeah, people respond to visual. We're 60%, more than 60% of our total part of our brain that's devoted to senses, right? To our 5 senses. 60% is devoted to visual processing. If you think about our devices, they're almost all visual, right? There's a little bit of haptic feedback. Occasionally there's audio, but for the most part, we surf the web in silence, right? And we almost never talk to it. And most of the time, your volume is turned down unless you're doing something. There's an app on the phone that allows you to make a phone call on it. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Yeah. You can actually use it to talk
Yeah.
to people. I don't know.
No.
Never done it myself. But,
Yeah.
I'm going to download it. But
Somebody keeps trying to do it to me, and I
Yeah,
keep ignoring it. I keep turning it off.
it's buzzing.
Exactly.
I feel it buzz. But the reality is it is visual, but it's got to be the right visual. A lousy product shot will not help your product, but something that product shot of that new Apple iPhone resonated with you, and the words you use to describe it say that they reached that person, but they might display that phone differently to my father, who's a grandfather. They might show and be like, this is a phone, and it's easy to hold. And you know what I mean? Like, they might market to my dad way differently than you, and I hope they do, because you're like on the aesthetic and the headphone jack, and you're like down for that. You saw those new headphone buds, and you're like, I could try that. So knowing which visual resonates with which person is what will turn the wheel to take your next action. That sounds smart.
It does sound smart, very smart. Yeah. And I think, back to pharma, and we look at like during the World Series last year, the Viagra commercial over and over and over, that was one particular audience, right? They were driving it for the male, and there was a very attractive woman on a bed, and they kept playing that one over and over and over again. But the people who were watching the World Series was wives and husbands and little children, and every single commercial break had a Viagra ad. And immediately, because they were selling one message to one person, but they were showing 4 other people that, it drove so much, a different conversation, because they led too much with what they thought was the target persona in a channel that was full of personas.
Yeah, broad-based advertising is hard. I mean, literally, you're talking about a blunt object.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, what we're going to try to do is just throw enough message at the wall that hopefully it filters through, right? They're just like, we read that for every 1,000 exposures, we get 1 call to action. Well, I want 30,000 calls to action. Well, we better run that. I don't know what's the math on that, like 3
Quite a bit, yeah.
something.
30 million.
None of us are mathematicians, but you pulled it off pretty well. But that's the thing. You end up getting a lot of people receiving a message that is completely and utterly not relevant to them, versus content marketing, where you're just in a position of helping people. That's selling. Selling, right? Selling is all about me selling you something. But in content marketing, we should be telling. I'd rather be in the position of helping somebody buy something from me and facilitate a purchase and becoming a customer than trying to convince them and try to sell them. And there's a big difference between that. And the blunt object of the advertisement is fading away, because really you're annoying 30,000 or 30 million people to get to 30,000 people. So why annoy people at a 1% return investment when you can actually provide resources to make somebody who's looking for that solution privately, discreetly, and provide them the information to answer their question?
Today, real time is the only time that counts. To stay relevant, you have to stay ahead. Your customers want the right information, right now, wherever they are. So how do you meet the demands of today's customers? By marketing in context. Context accounts for a customer's interaction with your brand. So each touch builds on the next, creating more meaningful experiences for your customers. At Sitecore, we call this context marketing. To do it well, you need marketing technology that has 3 things: contextual intelligence, content management, and omni-channel automation. Contextual intelligence gives you the information you need about your consumers, so the content you manage is more relevant and is automatically delivered wherever your customers are. The Sitecore Experience platform was built for context marketing, so you can create a more personalized customer experience. Demand more from your marketing technology. Demand more from marketing. Own the experience. Sitecore.
Exactly. And it goes back to that hero's journey. You've got a hero and you've got a guide.
Yeah.
And if you think about a guide, if you're in a park and there's a guide there, the guide isn't walking around. There's not a sign. Like every time you turn around, there's a sign there and it's trying to get you to go to a particular place.
Right.
It's full of information. It allows you to pick the information you want, and it's always there to provide you that information. And you're the hero on that journey.
Everybody's a hero on their own journey, and we have to just recognize that some people respond to text, some people respond to audio, video, but when they need the information that they need and they want it, you do have to provide it in a way that makes sense to them. And yeah, my learnings as a comic book creator and as an educator have helped inform the kinds of things that when I was in the agency, I recommended to my clients. And now that I'm on the client side, we recommend to use to communicate to our audiences, right? And to facilitate their user journey. And a quick note on comics. I mean, one of the cool things about comics is it is an extremely intimate, controllable medium. That is, when you would turn the page of a comic book and you would read dialogue, you read it in the voice in your head. The voice in your head has your accent, and it has your intonation, and it has your phrasing, and you add something to it. The explosion, the snikt from Wolverine, the blam, all of that you created, and you can linger on it as long as you'd like. But when Hugh Jackman is in a movie and he's playing Wolverine, we all hear Hugh Jackman the exact same way. It's a very passive thing, and you can't slow it down, right? You can't slow a movie down and enjoy it or speed it up, but in a comic you can, and you can go back and flip in ways that no other medium allows you to do except the web, right? We control that experience in a way that other mediums are not controllable, and we hear it in our own voice. So when we do that, you know, I'm a old Marvel fan, and I would hear everything in Stan Lee's voice. It'd be like, "True believers, everybody today, bringing Marvel comics to the masses, you kids and Spider-Man. Today, fighting Dr. Octopus. Join us with the Marvel Marching Society." And, you know, everybody heard it the same way, except when Stan read it, we all heard Stan. But that's what changed the medium, right? One guy changed the medium because he talked the medium, helped us to get on the same page, and brought comics to where it is. We're still in a very early stage of the web. It's a new technology, and we have not yet figured it out, and it's changing in real time. Social media is changing in real time. At best, if you think about it, the web is maybe preteens, and social media is like a surly adolescent. And we have not figured out how to control them, make them work, and we really don't know where they're going. We were going to try and point them in the right direction, hope for the best. But we're still early, so all of us at this conference are defining what this experience will be, what it means. What you're doing in podcasting was not possible a few years ago. There was a giant multinational corporation that was a gatekeeper to say what we would listen to. The fact that we're sitting at a poker table in a hall in Cleveland and you're reaching probably more people that care about your show than cared about the radio show that's being broadcasted on the radio right now says that you are reaching your audience in a way that truly resonates and impacts them. And we couldn't do that years ago. And the internet has democratized it, and social media has accelerated it in ways that we can't even imagine. So I think people need to learn really how to use the medium. As practitioners, I encourage people to write, draw, create, make videos, succeed, fail, but make. So much of what we learn here is not to be an abstract theorist, but actually to be a practitioner of something. And I can't stress enough how people should have a side hustle and try something and see what happens when they succeed or fail, and try and see what works. Because even Joe Polizzi talked about it. The first thing he tried, Junta 42 or Junta 42, failed, and then CMI came out of the ashes. But you have to be a creator. You must make. I always say to, and I'm a copywriter. I don't know, did your background in liberal arts?
No, I'm a software developer.
Okay, software developer. Still a similar proxy. If the last time a copywriter or an artist created something for themselves was when they were in college, and the only time they create is when there's a job bag in front of them, then they are failing. You studied for 4+ years to become proficient at your craft. And now you stop it because there's a commercial need and then no other incentive. Now we have the gates open. Paint, draw, write. All of those things will teach you how to be better at content marketing. The further you get away from the actual content creation, the further you get away, it becomes more abstract from your actual customer, no matter what your medium is. So I still write, I still draw for myself, and it makes me better at my job. And I think everybody should find that side hustle that forces them to express something not work related, because you bring all of it back to work no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I take on photography and I shoot photos everywhere I go, and they're not just like fun, like candid shots. I'm going to sit down and take a professional looking photo. And I've had photos in travel and leisure, and I've had photos on, Business Week. I'm a software developer / marketer,
and
right?
That's great, right?
And
you bring it all back, right?
Side hustle,
yeah.
Right?
And it's funny, like you look at guys like PewDiePie. You know who PewDiePie is? Okay, so PewDiePie, this is a guy who plays video games and other people watches him, and he just cracks jokes. And apparently he's a millionaire. And you don't know where these things will lead. Your photography, who knows where it'll lead? Maybe you'll develop an app that's that everybody wants to use and then gets bought by Facebook for $1 billion. Oh, wait, that's Instagram. But, the point being, right, if you don't combine non-obvious things in non-obvious ways, the internet won't iterate. And I believe that there is an idea etherverse. Sometimes people go, what a great idea that was. So I make photo reference books for comic book artists. And I take photos. I'm not a good photographer, but I'm competent enough for the idea of what I need to do. How many people have come up to me at Comic-Con and go, dude, I had that same idea. And I go, I know. It floated back to the idea etherverse, and I brought it down, and I used it.
I did something about it.
Right? And now if I have ideas, and sometimes I go, I had this great idea, and I don't use it, it floats up, and it goes to the next person, and then the next person uses it. The idea etherverse it's our shared consciousness of shared experience, and we need to utilize that. So expressing yourself in photography is the way that you're pulling down the idea etherverse and then manifesting it. And everything that you do in your photography makes you better as a podcaster, makes you better as a software developer. It's inevitable. You're learning skills that you will apply that someone else can't possibly know, because you're like, oh, that. It's like superhero comics. Every superhero comic should have a resolution where the superhero uses a power that is uniquely theirs, right? If any superhero can solve it, it's not a good story, right? If you solve a problem by punching somebody in the face, it's not a great story. But if you use your unique power, Spider-Man's like, I shot a web at him, and you go, only he could have done that, right? That's a unique solution. So you're going to bring a unique solution that says you're a good interviewer on a podcast, you're a photographer, and you're a software developer. Wow, that's a trifecta of unique skill sets molded together in an Venn overlay that makes you better at all three of those things.
Awesome. Well, thank you for
that
your time.
Good, huh?
I know we all
it inspired him.
Yeah, we're going to take this, and I'm going to go draw my own comic. No.
Listen, and she said I was only allowed to have 10 minutes. I totally. She
know.
cut it off at 10, though.
Yeah, it's not really.
We've just been rolling by ourselves.
We don't. This is just for show. We don't actually do anything here. I just stand here and talk to people. Yeah. But thank you for joining the show, and I can't wait to get this out. And I mean, just the fact that not knowing about Deadpool coming into this, but actually enjoying the movie without the kids in the room, but and seeing like how Marvel has embraced this.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
how a company came from the ashes. They were in bankruptcy for years, and there was a question of at some point in the industry, would DC buy their IP? Like, would DC then own everything? And then there was a question of other people trying to buy their IP, and then they rose from the ashes. And it was that will be a case study that we study years from now, because we're still learning it in real time, how this company went from bankruptcy. And I think a couple of my friends were working for them, and they were getting paid in stocks, and the stocks for Marvel shares were about $7. How would you like to get a piece of that?
Yeah.
So now they're out of the ashes, and that's a hell of a case study of people that just said, we have to reinvent ourselves or else. And one of the things you can learn from comics, and I'll let you go with this, is we truly get together with our fans and our audience, and we listen to them every day. You go to Comic-Con, I'll be at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con next, 130,000 people. There's no velvet rope. Like, we're just in the thick of it, and we're talking to our fans. They'll tell us exactly what they think. And comics, year over year, for the past 5 or 6 years, while newspaper sales and other print sales are going down, comic sales are going up because we're listening. And marketers need to listen. You need to get into the trenches with your customers, listen to them, stop talking at them, stop solving problems they don't need solved, and be part of that community. And I think that'll be the success for content marketers going forward is literally getting in the same room, get out of the conference room, and be with your audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to go back home and dig more up on Deadpool now. Awesome.
It was a pleasure. Thank you
too.
very much.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
There are so many marketing tools to choose from these days, more than 3,500 the last time we checked. If you're overwhelmed and confused, you're not alone. With so many options, marketers are having a difficult time trying to select which tools will meet their team's unique needs. So why do the top content marketing teams choose DVHQ? It's because of our unique focus. Let me explain. The typical content marketing process looks something like this. You start with a defined strategy, then you ideate and brainstorm with your team. Create a plan of attack, produce the content, optimize it, then publish and promote the content, and finally, review the analytics to see how your content performed. As you may know, most marketing software tools are built to support the back half of this process. There are countless CMS platforms, email marketing tools, marketing automation systems, social publishing tools, analytics suites, etc. The list goes on and on. But here's the thing. The back half of the process is not where companies are really struggling. What marketing teams are really struggling with is the upfront part of the process, the strategy, the ideation, planning, workflow, and collaboration during the content production process. Sound familiar? If you don't get your upfront strategy and planning right, the odds of consistently publishing great content is, well, not very good. So these upfront areas are where we focus 100%. We don't want to reinvent wheels or be a jack of all trades, master of none type of content marketing solution. DVHQ is on a mission to build a content marketing platform that makes it incredibly easy for you to plan and produce high quality content more efficiently. This approach then gives you the freedom to integrate and connect DVHQ to your preferred downstream tools. So, if you're looking for help with strategy, ideation, planning, and collaboration, then we're the solution for you.